Welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Calder. The Women of Ambition podcast is a space where women can come together to destigmatize female ambition and help each other harness their drive to align with their unique values. Today, I am talking with local passport family creator, Preethi Harbuck, and we're going to talk about her passion for travel, social justice, and global education, as well as how identifying our own strengths and shortcomings can make space for us to hone in on the ambition we really want to harness and grow. I wanted to make one quick correction. Later in the episode, I refer to Susan Easton Black as the first professor of religion at BYU. I intended to say first female professor of religion at Brigham Young University. So please keep that in mind as you're listening and enjoy. Welcome to the Women of Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Calder, and today we have Preethi Harbuck here with us. I came across Preethi a couple years ago, I think. I was trying to educate myself about lots of different things that intersect with your brand, national parks and travel, which we have done a bunch of. Becoming aware of different kinds of cultures and people, and you have a lot of educational resources for that, Preethi. I've just been so impressed with all the resources you've been able to gather and the way that you present your material. We've used your website a ton of times in our travels because we've done 43 national parks in the last 18 months and traveled a whole bunch, and it's been really fun to have a resource to go to that talks about the different U.S. parks, but also talks about the indigenous people and respecting spaces when you're traveling, and that's just been really eye-opening to me. So I'm really, really excited to have you here today. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Alyssa. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, add more to who you are and what you have to offer, because I know there's way more than I'm even aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of you may know me from my Instagram and blog called Local Passport Family. So that is a space for me to talk about social justice focused travel, especially for families. So we have 5 children. My husband and I live in California, and we love to explore with them, both locally as well as internationally. We started traveling with them. Well, we started traveling before we even had children, and we knew that was something that was important to us, especially as a tool of education, as a tool to get to know other peoples and perspectives and cultures. And that has been an incredible opportunity for us, while also recognizing that there are also sometimes challenges that come from travel. There's harm that can be perpetuated. And so it's been a good opportunity for us to reflect on those sometimes competing priorities. And so we've tried to introduce our children to some of that as well. When our children were really young, when we first had our oldest child, we weren't sure that we would be able to continue traveling with children. So we before he was born, we sort of planned in a last hurrah exploration trip, as it were. So I guess about a year and a half or so before our oldest was born, I was in graduate school, or I was about to start graduate school, and my husband was about to start a new job. So we planned in a summer of travel for ourselves, and we explored 3 different continents, and we figured, we'd get in all of our travel before we had children. And then little did we know that would continue on. When our oldest was about 4 months old, I was in business school, and I had a brief project in South Africa. And so because he was so young, I knew he needed to come along, and my husband came along as well so that he could help out with the baby while I was doing my project. So during that trip, we explored different parts of Southern Africa, and it was an amazing experience. But again, we thought that, this is one little baby. This would kind of be our last big opportunity to travel. And that kind of kept happening as we had more children. We did more and more last hurrah trips until we finally figured out that, hey, this is something that's a priority for our family. We want to continue to have these experiences. We want to continue to expose our children to other perspectives and firsthand knowledge of other people and to learn from them. So it was something that we decided to prioritize in our family life. So that's a lot of what I share on my account and on my blog in terms of being able to explore the world, both near and far, and learn from the peoples and places that we encounter on those travels.
That is so awesome. So I have some stats here that I got from your website. So if it's not accurate, please correct me. 62 countries, 43 with kids. That
Yeah, I
right?
think it's a little higher now. I think it's
Oh,
65 and 48, but
wow.
yeah.
That,
I
okay.
probably haven't updated it, so that's on me.
Talk about ambitious, okay? Holy smokes. 5 children traveling all over in with very, I mean, you didn't have 5 kids the whole time probably, but
No.
pregnancy and each of those little babies being babies and growing up. Um, that is incredible. And I know you've also done big RV trips as we have. And I see your kids like practicing violin as you travel around and do things. I'm just like, holy smokes, this woman is on top of it. Like, this is
Hardly.
an
Depends on the
amazing
day.
family. Right. But just the fact that you would even attempt something just so epic and just out of the ordinary, right? Like, it takes a little bit extra. It takes an extra person to kind of break the mold and be like, no, we're gonna figure this out and it's not gonna be perfect, but we're gonna just like do it. And I think that is just the coolest. What kinds of things are you like, have you had to say no to in order to make space for travel in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think financially there are a lot of things that are trade-offs for travel. Travel typically is not inexpensive, although we have definitely found ways to mitigate that. But yeah, we say no to a lot of things. We say no to living in a huge house. You know, our home is just over 2,000 square feet for 7 of us, which feels honestly like the perfect size. I don't think we would want a bigger home, but we certainly don't live in a mansion. We say no to having our kids in tons of sporting events. Our kids enjoy sports. They typically participate in maybe one per season, but we certainly do not go overboard. Time constraints are real and travel takes time and it's
Mhm.
wonderful, but it also means that other things can't also be a priority at the same time. I always think that, you know, you can do a lot of different things, but you can't always do all of them at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's what we're learning on this podcast. The last 3 episodes have focused on that. You can do a lot of things, you can't do them at the same time, and things might go slower if you have more on your plate. And I need that message over and over again because I am not a patient person. I'm a passionate person and I want to do it all and I want to travel and I want to take my kids and I want to educate them and uh it's exhausting and it's not it's I look for a balance or at least cyclical things that I can do that, you know, don't exhaust me all at once. So one other thing that I think is so great on your website is you share how you do all these things. But one of them is Airbnb your house, which we did that over the summer and used your resources to do that. And that financed a significant portion of our trip. It helped alleviate some of the stress where we are. We're in Heber, Utah, and there are like no rentals and there's like no space for people and there's a lot of people that need to come in here for work, and so we were able to give a temporary house to someone else, which is really
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah, that's
um,
awesome.
so I think you have so much to contribute to the world and you are contributing in so many ways. um, do you want to list like your top 5 passions that you have right now, like it doesn't have to be like a project but just like a topic that you're really passionate about?
Yeah. I mean, global education, I feel like has to be up there. I think that there's so much to learn from each person and each perspective and culture and background. And, you know, so that sort of diverse education is something that I feel really passionately about. Um, Helping marginalized communities reclaim their spaces, whether that be, um, you know, people who are from communities who have historically not have had as much access to the outdoors, indigenous communities being pushed out of their homelands, however that looks. I feel like just helping marginalized communities reclaim access to spaces is something that I also feel really passionately about. Helping families feel comfortable talking about social justice education and feeling comfortable talking about diversity and inclusion and not making it scary and advocating for that in their schools. That's something that is really important to me as well. Music education is another thing. So I created a program to teaches an introductory violin course to young children. I feel really passionately about the power of music education, especially getting that into the hands of those who might not have as much access, who might not have as much education. I think that it has provided incredible benefits to me and my family, and it's something that I hope to use to expand access to music education. I feel like just exploring the outdoors, connecting as a family through exploration. Our family has been able to get so much closer through participating in the outdoors, through outdoors recreation, through travel in general. That family connection has been really important for us and has really helped our home life as well.
Excellent. How did you get to the point of being so passionate about social justice?
I feel like it's always been something that has been on my radar. It's always been something that has impacted me personally. Obviously, I hold a lot of privileges, and I have also been in a lot of situations where I have felt like an outsider, where I have felt like I haven't had the same generational knowledge and background and resources. And so having that intersection has really made me feel passionately about expanding those resources, expanding access, and disseminating knowledge to those who may not be as familiar with it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Talk to us a little bit about maybe your childhood and where your ambitious nature may have been seen as a younger person.
Oh, that's a good question. I feel like I've always been kind of a stubborn personality. Um, my mom loves to tell this story. I think I was maybe 2.5 or 3 years old, and we lived in Ohio at the time, so we got a lot of snow. And I had this purple snowsuit that I think it zipped up. I want to say it zipped up the back, and so I couldn't access the zipper very easily, especially as a 3-year-old. And so there was this one time when we were out, like my mom was shoveling snow. I was probably throwing snow or something, and we came inside, and she tried to take off my purple snowsuit, and I was just not having it. I did not want her to take it off. I wanted to take off my purple snowsuit all by myself, but could not take it off. And so she finally just let me be. Eventually I fell asleep because I was so exhausted from my frustration over this darn purple snowsuit.
Very sweaty too, I bet.
Exactly. So then she's thinking, okay, she's finally asleep. I can take off the snowsuit now. Of course, I woke up when she tried to take off the snowsuit, was really frustrated again, and then apparently did eventually get the snowsuit off somehow on my own. So
very good.
So I don't know what that says about my personality, but my husband.
I have about 3 of those daughters in my house right now, so I'm happy to hear that. What about like high school years? College?
Yeah, I feel like I was always a pretty committed student. I always felt a commitment to equity and expanding education and providing resources for a lot of different people. That was something that came into my high school experience as well. And I was always committed to school and, kind of doing what I needed to do, probably for better or for worse. I tend to be a pretty rigid person in some aspects. I can probably, take a chill pill sometimes. But yeah, some of that I think has probably come through as well.
So being this little kid with all this passion and determination, and here you are now, social activist, a blogger, creating real content for families to use in their home. I know you have provided resources for people to actually bring to their schools and help diversify the books and the stories that are being told. And I think those resources are so amazing. But how did you get from that place of passion and determination to where you are now, where you're actually deciding this is how I'm contributing in these spaces?
Yeah. I think it's evolved over time. I never thought that I would, be a blogger or, an activist or any of those things, that wasn't really on my radar or in my plan. It was something that sort of came about, I suppose sort of organically. Mm-hmm. I had a lot of people asking me questions about places that we would explore both locally as well as abroad. And so I started my account as a way to share some of that, as well as some of the education that we did in preparation to, visit some of these places, as well as, while we were in these places. And so it sort of evolved from there to be able to create more, accessible content to more people that they could then not just, see and observe and look at as an inspiration. I never want to be a person who just seems aspirational. That is never my goal. I want it to be accessible. I want people to take resources and use them in their own homes and with their own families. I will not feel successful if it's just something that I'm doing and people are like, wow, that's amazing. Like, I never want people to look at me and think that that's amazing and that's something that I could never do. That is never the purpose. I want it to be something that is accessible, something that people can take and use and make an impact in their own homes and in their own communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Actionable change that will actually result in something instead of just a pretty picture on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. What are your current projects?
I feel like I always have a lot of projects. So I have hosted a global children's book club for the last couple of years. It has looked different in different phases. So last year, I put together an A to Z book club. So it was 26 different countries, one for each letter of the alphabet, and each country had a picture book, as well as a bunch of different resources to learn about that country. So for instance, A is for Australia, and there's a picture book read aloud. A lot of them were by the authors themselves. And then there are resources for recipes and crafts and, all those things. And so
That's
that was
amazing.
such a fun experience. I loved putting that together. And then this year it has been a monthly book club. So we've focused on a different country each month. And that has also been really fun to discuss those books and read them with my children. And this year it's been chapter books. So right now I'm in the process of figuring out what that looks like for next year, how it can be simple and easy to use, something that families can actually incorporate into their homes and into their lives. So right now I'm working on putting that together.
What does the brainstorming process look like for you?
Some of that is asking readers, what is useful for them, what is helpful for them, what they, feel like they can actually, what they actually have the time to use. Thinking about whether, it's chapter books or picture books or, what is actually serving the community that I hope uses it.
Mm-hmm. Great. Do you have any big future goals that you want to share? Like lifelong big goals?
Um, Big future goals. I would love to visit 100 countries someday.
I think that's gonna happen.
I hope
thing.
so.
As long as COVID, we can calm down and get vaccinated and
I
wear
know, right?
masks, it'll be okay.
What else? I would love to. Um, I feel like, yeah, continuing to put together resources that families actually use on a bigger scale. I think that would be awesome. I started something called Mompreneur Academy last year that I haven't had bandwidth to actually, put together really. But I would love to. I think there's so much potential in moms. We are organizers. We are planners. We do all this stuff. And a lot of moms are really content doing that in their homes, and that's all they need. And that's awesome. And I think a lot of moms feel like they have these skills without necessarily having outside experience that they want to harness and aren't really sure how to do that. And I would love to help moms harness some of that experience and some of that knowledge.
That's exactly what we're here for. So what are your ideas for how to even go about doing that? Because I'm in that space. I have talents and skills, and I have a degree, and I have 4 children that I care about, and I have all these passions, and I've been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years. And so I've been doing things on the side, and I'm volunteering in places to get more skills, but I need to figure out my next step. So what should I do next? Teach me.
Ideally, I would love to so my background is in business. I worked in consumer packaged goods after my undergraduate degree, which was in business, and then I went to business school after. And so I would love to share some of those tools in a more concise and accessible way with moms. I would love to, either have a course or something that moms feel like they can access on their own time without feeling like they have to go and get this whole other degree and commit a whole bunch of time to be able to access that knowledge. I want to make that knowledge more accessible.
Yeah, that's great. And especially for entrepreneurs who might not have the time or the patience or the money to go and get a larger degree. I think that's fantastic. Moms as a segment of the community, we do have so much to contribute, and we have real experience that maybe we can't put down on a resume that will be respected, but we're not doing nothing. Like we're learning a craft, we're learning a skill, we're really getting good at what we're doing, and we're each doing something slightly different. So I think that's fantastic. And that's a segment of the community that isn't always seen. We're put on a pedestal and we are thanked generally, but when we want to reemerge into different areas of society, it's not always respected. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
100% to that.
I'm really excited for that, and I look forward to whatever you create with
Yeah, I just have to carve out the time at some point in life. So
yeah. So what is that like to have something that is so good and needed and just not be able to prioritize right now?
I mean, sometimes it's just frustrating, to be honest, I mean, especially with COVID, childcare has been so difficult. And so that has really just made, I think a lot of us recognize that, okay, maybe the time's not right now. Some things just have to go on the back burner out of sheer necessity. And hopefully we can get back to them at some point.
Realities of life.
Yep.
Have you ever experienced feeling like there are barriers to you accomplishing the things that you want to accomplish, your goals?
I mean, I feel like time is the biggest barrier, especially as a mom of 5. It just feels like time is always the most precious commodity. I want to have enough time for my children. I want them to feel valued and validated, and I want them to feel like I'm interested and engaged in their lives. And I also want to have time for my own pursuits. I want to have time for my husband. I want to have time to try out fun restaurants just for fun without, any business reason or whatever. I want to have time to read books. There are so many things that I love and want to do. But yeah, time is just challenging.
So how do you decide that?
It's like prioritizing anything else. It's figuring out what is most important and trying to choose that more often than not. But sometimes it gets derailed. We all sometimes spend too much time scrolling Instagram or spend too much time not doing the things that are our highest priorities. And that's just a fact of life, and I don't think it's reasonable to expect any of us to always prioritize perfectly. We can't always choose the things that we know are our biggest priorities. Sometimes we just have to have that time to relax. Sometimes we just have to have that time to not be perfect, and hopefully more often than not, we can choose the things that we actually really want in the long run.
I think that's good. I know for me, sometimes I think something is a priority and then life will adjust and change. And I'll be like, oh, that actually wasn't a great use of my time. But maybe it was because I discovered something new about myself and now I'm going to like pivot in a new direction.
Yeah.
And
I don't think there's any harm in changing that. We can all adapt with, that's part of the great thing about life. It's not a bad thing to change our minds about things. And I don't think there's any benefit that comes from beating ourselves up over either not choosing our time perfectly or, having different priorities. Like, we can only do what we can do and then move forward from there.
What do you say to other moms, not moms, this is for anybody. I'm getting stuck in mom mode. Sorry. Any women, because we have all kinds of listeners who want to be doing something different or something more than what they currently have on their plate, whether that's motherhood or whether that's a career that maybe just isn't fulfilling them the way that they want.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I think first and foremost, figure out what you want, figure out what appeals to you. Look back at your, high school self or kid self. Like, what were your passions? What are your, not just skills, but what are your gifts in terms of where do you naturally gravitate? What are obviously we can all build skills and experience, but most of us have specific gifts or talents or, things that we gravitate toward that have been pretty consistent. And where does that lie? How can you get more of that into your life? Is there something else that would fill more of that bucket? And is there a way that you can harness those priorities more, harness those gifts more?
What about creating a supportive network of people to help you accomplish that? Because I know you have an awesome husband who's helping you. Sounds like you have childcare that supports.
I mean, none of this would happen without all of the other people in my life that help me to make it happen. My husband is an incredible partner, and that could be a spouse. It could be a parent. It could be a childcare worker. I am so grateful for my children's teachers who, pour so much into them, who consider their education in partnership with me, who are willing to allow me to discuss with them and have input, but also contribute so very much and care for them during the day. There's no way that I could make all of this happen without all of their support.
Mm-hmm. How do you, if someone's wanting to start something totally new, how would they build in support systems like that
Mm-hmm.
if they don't currently have it?
Yeah. I mean, I think we all have gifts and talents, and we all have things that we are not particularly good at, and I think it's just as important to consider those and be willing to let those go. On my account, we've been talking a little bit recently about our parenting priorities, the things that we are good at, the things that we want to choose as parents, and being willing to let go the things that we're not good at or not as interested in. There's certain things that I really care about with my children that I don't want to outsource. I actually love teaching my children to read. That's something that is super fun for me. I love spending the time with them. I love going through the process with them. That's not necessarily something that I feel super compelled to outsource, but somebody else might hate that process. And it's totally okay to let someone else jump in and fill that role. There's no shame in having a team of people helping you and helping your family, and we all have different things like that. It might be house cleaning, it might be cooking, but there are lots of different ways that we can build in support into our lives, and it might look different from one person to the next.
Yeah, I really like that. One of my favorite quotes is from Harry Potter, and it's play to your strengths. And it's like the most simple advice. And like when I read it as like a 14-year-old, it like clicked in my brain. But play to your strengths, and if something isn't your strength, maybe that's the thing that you get help with. And we all have different things that we love to do, and if we can work together, we can make that happen. Actually, I have a story about that. Susan Easton Black is a professor at Brigham Young University. She just received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the LDS Publishing and Media Association conference that happened over the weekend. And she told the story of being a single parent and really, really, really wanting to go back to school and having 3 children and no support system, and was talking to a lady at church who had 9 children and had just realized that she was not going to be able to have more children. And she was mourning that and was really, really sad. Even though she had 9 kids, that was the thing she loved to do, was raise children. And they got together and both realized, I have a need for someone to really help me parent my children and help take over childcare. I have a hole in my life that I want to fill with children. And so they got together, I think it was for a year, where Dr. Black, I suppose, Professor Black, went back to school full time. And this woman essentially took care of her 3 children as if they were her own. She had 12 kids for a year, while this other mom was able to go back to work and found her passion, found that this was what she wanted to do with her life. And now she is this fantastic, amazing scholar. She was the first religious professor at Brigham Young University. And that only happened because these women came together and were really honest about their needs and their strengths too. Like, we have to be honest about what we can contribute. Mm-hmm. And when we come together, like, amazing things can happen. And yeah. And now this woman, Dr. Black, is such an example for so many people, for women and men of all ages. And hearing her story and how her lifetime of achievements could go back to that one conversation that she had with a friend. It was amazing to me that we can, as a community, as women, we can do that for each other.
Absolutely, yeah. I think, like you said, we all have those differing strengths. And I think so many times it's easy for us to compare and think that, oh, that person is really good at raising children. I'm not as good at raising children, and then feel bad about that. And instead, we can think that person's really great at raising children. That's awesome. How can we come together and expand that pie instead of diminishing the pie?
Yeah, I've seen that. So I work with a lot of homeschool families, and I have a business of helping them figure out how to homeschool their family and what works for them and what it looks like, because it does not have to look like school at home. It can look like so many different things. And one of the amazing things that I'm seeing come together, especially because of COVID, is parents bringing their strengths together and the things they enjoy doing and helping teach each other's kids. So maybe they have like a core group of 10 kids. One mom's really great at math. one is an artist, and so she brings the artist. One dad knows how to play the piano, and so he's taking over music. And they're coming together in this community of friendship and strength and understanding to better their kids' lives and also protect their health, protect their community. And they're hitting all these values that took relying on community and trusting people and also contributing in the areas we can. And like it's good for everybody, not even just the kids, not just the adults, but the community and the awareness and everything that's derived from it. Just, it makes me so happy to see that blossoming in our world, even during times of incredible hardship for so many people. So
yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
that's my little rant about community gathering. And I appreciate when people are honest and heartfelt, because that's when we can actually connect and help each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Anything else that you would like to share with women who are ambitious in this world today?
I mean, I think that there is just so much to be contributed, and there's time to do it. Sometimes we feel like, oh, I missed my chance. I missed the boat. I, didn't do this when I was 21 or whatever. And so it's too late. And it's not too late. We can all still contribute. We have so much time. We don't need to feel stressed about having not done everything yet. It's great to be ambitious, and it's great to recognize that it doesn't all have to happen in a day. It doesn't all have to happen right now. We can set the foundation for continuing to capitalize on those ambitions and continuing to fill those ambitions throughout our lives.
I like that. And we can start in little ways and build.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think another thing too is giving yourself credit for what you've done. It's like if you think that ambition is only business success, I would be a complete failure. But if you can say, well, I volunteered here, I have raised 4 children, I manage my household, and refocus how we see ourselves, we can see our true selves in that. And I think that is just really freeing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, Preethi. This has been a fantastic chat.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I know people are going to want to follow you, and I didn't even know about all those resources. So tell us where we can find all the things you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah. So
for.
I'm most active on Instagram at Local Passport Family. I'm also on Facebook at the same handle. And then my blog is just localpassportfamily.com. So yeah, easy to remember, all the same. And I'd love to have any friends come join the conversation at any of those places.
Excellent. And I love what you do share, because it does spark thoughts and conversations with people online, but then in my own home and my own family. And I talk to my husband like, oh, look at this idea. Like, how are we going to approach this?
I love that. And it delights me that is sparking other conversations offline.
Yeah. And I think you also share other social activist pages, and I found other people through you there as well. And that has informed when we did our RV travels during COVID, and we had to be extra careful. And I have a comorbidity, so I had to be extra careful. But traveling through the United States and having so many things closed and just being in nature, we were able to really focus on the indigenous populations' history and learn from them, and learning how to find accurate sources for information. And your sources and the people you shared helped me do that, and I'm really grateful for that. And I was able to educate my children much more concretely and from the voices of the people, rather than maybe the government or people who are getting paid to share those voices, the actual people. So I'm grateful for that. And I think you're doing wonderful things. And I know we have so much to learn from you. So thank you so much. And
thank you so much for having me, Alyssa.
Yeah. We look forward to your next endeavors.
Thanks again. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Women of Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Alyssa Calder Hulme. If you'd like to listen to more episodes, we are everywhere. Just search for Women of Ambition podcast. We also have a website, womenofambitionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for sharing the podcast with the ambitious women in your lives. And if you haven't yet left us a review, I'd really appreciate it. You can do that through Apple Podcasts or you can do it straight on our website. Thanks so much.